So, as introduced, I am indeed representing a Ukrainian company today, but actually I'm not so much representing a Ukrainian company, I'm representing Ukraine today. So I'm speaking on behalf of the entire IT sector in Ukraine, and not only the IT sector, but the company in general. And I hope to have an interesting conversation with all of you about why it's imperative for Europe and the European market that all of our companies and all of our livelihoods depend on to continue to support Ukraine and to do it in a way that is to our own advantage. So I'm not from Ukraine, I'm from Scotland. So why am I talking about Ukraine? I'm 45 years old. Actually, I'm 44 years old. I'll be 45 years old in a couple of months. I've lived in Eastern Europe since 2001. So I arrived in this place. This is Studentsky Grad, the student's town, in Sofia, Bulgaria, in 2001, fresh from university. It was a really interesting time. These blocks there, I lived in one of them. My first and still a very good friend of mine when I arrived in Bulgaria, he lived in another one of those blocks. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Eastern Europe, but the student blocks are, for me, in 2001 as a 22-year-old, they were a very exotic place. A little bit basic, but a lot of fun. You had all of these long corridors with little rooms, about 12, 14 square meters in size. And inside of those rooms were 2 to 3 students, occasionally 5 to 6 if they had friends over, and sometimes they didn't leave for a few months. And it was a time where the Eastern Europe that we know today, and the Eastern Europe that has contributed so much to the EU, really started to find its feet. This friend of mine, he had a side business. He had a connection to the local LAN network, which was all connected with cables up the side of the buildings, and quite rudimentary. And he used to access libraries of videos, movies, TV shows that were popular at the time, and he would pirate them. He would burn them onto DVDs, and he would sell them to all the other students up and down the corridors and on the floors and in the neighboring blocks. He then extended that business into an unofficial extension of the LAN network, selling subscriptions. Now he's a very senior IT manager for an international company. And a lot of the people that I spent time with back in those days are very senior managers in international companies. Some of them have their own businesses. And I think there's a reason for that. These people, they grew up in a tougher environment than a lot of us who grew up in Western Europe know and are familiar with. And it honed them into problem solvers, into people who could deal with whatever life threw at them, not always ideal circumstances, and they could come out of that with strength and initiative and problem-solving skills. That's how long I've been in Eastern Europe. That's what I looked like when I arrived there, a long time ago. Just to give a little bit of depth and for you all to laugh at my... And it's well known that the software developers and the engineers, and not only, but especially from Eastern Europe, are amongst the best, not only in Europe, but in the world. From Poland, from Romania, from Bulgaria, from Serbia, and I don't want to miss, there's a lot of other countries that I've missed out, but a lot of them have formed the backbone of the digital economy. If any of you work, I think a lot of the people here work in Fintech or in other tech sectors. I'm sure all of you have many colleagues from Eastern Europe. Ukraine was a little bit behind the development trajectory of the Eastern European countries that are now in the EU. It was maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 years later when Ukraine started to become a real IT hub to realize its potential. It has the same background, the same history and legacy in mathematics, in engineering. And as Ukraine started to move closer towards Europe, Ukraine's IT sector started to blossom. And Ukraine became the second biggest exporter of IT services in Europe. No matter what digital product or service we use, in our personal lives, in our working lives, you can almost guarantee that there have been Ukrainian engineers working on that product. Almost every big company in Western Europe, almost every big company in the world works with East European IT experts, a lot of them still based in countries around Eastern Europe. In Ukraine now, there's almost 275,000 IT specialists, second only to Poland in Europe, third only to Poland and India in the world. The value of the IT services exports in 2022 were approximately 7.35 billion. 2022 is the year Russia invaded Ukraine. In February, at the end of February, the second month of 2022. The only sector of the economy in Ukraine to grow in 2002 was the IT services sector. Every other sector has suffered, understandably, over the last 2 to 3 years. The IT services sector also, because its growth, which was annually about 30% year on year up until that point, has now plateaued. It still holds, it's still strong, but it's lost a lot of that strong growth that it had worked for and that it deserved because of the quality of the IT services exports coming out of the country. You can see here just a few of the stats behind that. As I've already mentioned, in early 2022, war came to Ukraine. War came to Europe, not just to Ukraine. We haven't completely avoided war in Europe since the end of the Second World War. There was the former Yugoslavia. But nothing to the extent of what's happening in Ukraine over the last 2 to 3 years. But Ukraine's IT services sector has proven itself incredibly robust. The vast majority of contracts with existing clients have been fulfilled, continue to be fulfilled, and European clients are not only continue to work with IT services companies from Ukraine. There's a reason for that, and it's not charity. They continue to deliver, and they continue to provide reliability, and they continue to provide best-in-class execution. But development of the market has stalled. It's grown in the last couple of years, but it's inched up, while the rest of the economy has slid. But in many ways, the IT services sector in Ukraine is stronger and even better than it was before. Because if we go back to my initial story about me arriving in Bulgaria back in 2001 and why I think the region has produced such good engineers, such good leaders, such innovation, such problem solving, is because of the pressure that professionals have developed under. And that pressure is high in Ukraine. For all of us in Europe, it's extremely important that we understand the role that Ukraine is playing at this moment in time to preserve the way of life that we all lead and the market, the capitalist democracy that all of our businesses rely on. Ukraine needs Europe. Ukraine needs Europe's support. But Europe needs Ukraine just as much, if not more. Without Ukraine, Russia would be at the border with Poland. And what that would mean, I think it's fairly clear how significant that would be. Fintech Forum. What does Fintech stand for? I think it stands for freedom, democracy or democratization of financial services, financial products, and financial knowledge. It stands for empowerment, it stands for innovation. These are the same things that Ukraine's IT services export sector also stands for. Now more than ever. In large part, it's the success of Ukraine's IT services sector that brought the country closer to Europe. It brought highly educated, highly able, young professionals into the global economy. It brought them into contact not only with people from around the world, but their way of thinking. And it made Ukraine determined to be part of Europe. And it's that determination that is today preserving Europe. And I think it's our responsibility in Europe to support Ukraine as it's supporting us. One way that we can do that in the tech sector is to trade with Ukraine. And to trade with Ukraine in the form of IT services is a fantastic way to support Ukraine's economy, because you can see the statistic here. The IT sector now accounts for almost 5% of the entire country's GDP. But it's actually much more important than that, because the income that the IT sector brings in is much more significant than almost in any other sector. And that means that one job created in Ukraine's IT sector leads to 2.7 jobs in Ukraine's economy. Ukraine's economy has to be strong if Ukraine is to remain strong and Europe is to remain strong. Why choose Ukrainian IT specialists when you can choose IT specialists from anywhere else, not only in Eastern Europe, but in the world? Before the war, a huge number of companies and organizations reached the conclusion that Ukraine was a good choice because of the quality to price ratio, because of the cultural closeness, because of communication, because of travel, but most importantly, because of the quality, and especially the quality to price ratio. The quality is even better now. The reliability is even better now. I've been working with Aimprosoft since January of this year. My colleagues, some of them in the sales and marketing department, because I'm in sales and marketing rather than the technical side, are still based in Kharkiv. You know how many meetings they've missed since January? None. None. Do you think anyone can say the same for colleagues from the Netherlands, from Scotland, from France, from Spain? I doubt it. Despite the conditions, it's added an extra layer of determination. Pressure makes diamonds, and there's a lot of diamonds available right now in Ukraine's IT sector. Until January of this year, I was working for a German company based in Munich. I had a lot of colleagues in Ukraine, but the company was based in Munich. I left that company for a Ukrainian company with a Cypriot daughter company, but a Ukrainian company. I gave up the security, or what many people would consider the security of a German company, to go and move to a Ukrainian company. But I'd been working with Ukrainian colleagues since February 2022, and I didn't see it as a risk. I saw it as an opportunity. First of all, to work with more great colleagues, and second of all, because I don't have any doubt about what the future holds for Ukraine. If we talk about the big picture, if we talk about the details, nobody is completely sure what the details will be. If we talk about the big picture, Ukraine will be here in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years. That's not in doubt, and that's not just over-optimism. That's the reality. Russia cannot take Ukraine. Russia can potentially, and I very much hope they don't, take parts of Ukraine. But you have any idea how big a country Ukraine is? It's huge. It takes 12 hours by train to travel from the east, where the front is, to the west. It's not possible. It won't happen. And what will be left is a stronger country. A country full of stronger people. People who've been turned into diamonds. If you have a choice to work with IT contractors, who do you think is going to be harder working, more reliable, more determined? This guy sitting in his pajamas at home in Milton Keynes, in London. He could be in Harlem. He could be in Paris. He could be anywhere. He has a comfortable life. He makes good money. He's not in any hurry. He's not worried about losing his job. If he loses his job as an IT expert, even in this economy, he won't find it very difficult to get another one. You'll probably miss the occasional meeting, unlike my colleagues. And life goes on in Ukraine. This is a dinner I had with my colleagues in February. I traveled to Ivano-Frankivsk, southwest of the country, near to the Carpathian Mountains. I spent a week there. I'll go back in August or September this year, again to spend time with colleagues. This is a restaurant in Ivano-Frankivsk. It's a town of 120,000 people. It's not a big town. I haven't had cocktails like that in London. I haven't had cocktails like that in Barcelona. The food was fantastic. The service was phenomenal. And the IT services sector keeps the same quality. And you know how much it cost for a starter, for a main, for cocktails? It was about $20 per head. It would be a top-class restaurant in any major European city. When you work with Ukrainian IT specialists, you get the same sort of price-to-quality ratio. And without belittling the situation, on the front, it's hard. People are dying to protect us in Europe. But the rest of the country is living, the rest of the country is working, also to protect Europe. And they're doing it to that standard. So I would urge all of you, if you work with distributed, remote IT teams, consider Ukraine. It has a lot going for it. You won't regret it, and it'll do a lot for your company, it'll do a lot for Europe. We invest in ESG. Why? Because we know that if we don't, we won't have the society, the economy, and the world that we need to support the way of life that we've grown used to. And it takes effort, it takes money. Trading with Ukraine is investing in Ukraine. And the reason should be the same. If we don't, then we won't have the economy, the democracy, and everything else that our businesses and our lives depend on. The only difference is that it won't cost your company money. It will save your company money. It will increase the quality, and it will cost less. So I think it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Is there a tension between providing for a workforce and fighting? I know they can also combine that, I've learned, but can you maybe say something about that?
In terms of societal tension?
Yes, societal tension indeed, like if you know that somebody is working for a tech company but actually should do something else. That's a societal aspect, I would say, but maybe also the availability.
Well, first, there's an economic front as much as there is a military front. And it's just as important. And most of the people understand that and realize that. I've been in Ukraine 3 times since the start of the war. It's not something that I've noticed. We have had small numbers of people in our company who have been called up, who have gone to the front. One's come back. The IT sector is low priority when it comes to conscription because it's so important for the economy. So it's relatively rare compared to other sectors that IT specialists do get called up to the army, but it does happen. But no, I don't think that there is a major societal rift from that front because it's brought people together. Everyone's fighting, everyone's pushing in the same direction. And it's for the future of Ukraine as part of Europe. And without the economy, then the military effort also won't be successful, and that's understood.